Good, beautiful morning, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar to introduce to you the new legal and taxation framework of Casablanca Finance City. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining us today. Let's give a few moments to our audience to jump in. Hi, Abslam. Hi, Avijit. Let's give them a few seconds, few moments to everyone to join us. I can see some members joining in. Go grab a cup of coffee or tea, make yourself comfortable and ready to engage with us. We're so glad to have you here today. We very, very much look forward to an interactive session with you today. Welcome, everyone. Hello, Lucia. Hello, Ngia. Hello, Pauline, Charles. Hello, Farid. Good to see you. As soon as you join in, please drop us a message in the chat box to say hi. Tell us which company or industry you're representing. We'd love to hear from you. We really want this session to be interactive. So tell us how long you've been in the CFC community. We are all celebrating 10 years of anniversary this year. So good to have this opportunity to meet up with you all. All right, I can see more joining in. Welcome, everyone. If you are new to these events, welcome. My name is Manal Bernoussi, and I'll be your moderator for this session. And today, for the very first time, I have with me all the executive team of Casablanca Finance City. All directors have cleared their schedule this morning and made themselves available to bring answers to all your questions. I hope you're ready for that, everyone. I hope you're ready to engage with us. Yesterday, we had a great session with our French-speaking members, and we're so glad to be here with you today to get the opportunity to address your questions as well. I think I can hear someone's mic on. If you could ask Rita to switch off the mic would be great. Thank you, Rita. All right, so today, here's a very quick run through of our session. First, we're going to show you a short video, okay? We're gonna show you a short video which explains the overall topic and main changes brought to you by this reform. Then I will introduce to you one by one our directors to deep dive on 5 topics we believe are really important and you should all be aware of. And finally, we'll save some time for the Q&A session, because that's why we're all here today, to get as many questions answered as possible. So right before we get started, I'd like to give the audience a quick overview of the Zoom platform we're using today. This is a very unique opportunity to make the most of this time we're spending together. At the bottom of the screen, you will notice some Zoom features. Most important button there is the Q&A widget. This is where we ask questions during the webinar. It also helps us keep track of all your questions and make sure we get back to each one of you. This is also a unique opportunity for all of us to interact. So even though we cannot see each other, but there's a whole team back here that is going through all your comments one by one. So please make sure to use that chat box and tell us about yourself and express any of your concerns if you have any. All right, we're almost done getting ourselves ready. Today's session is being recorded. Just tag the QR code you can see on the screen right now. It will take you right to our YouTube channel where you can access the replay once it's uploaded. So without further ado, here's the video and we'll be back right after that.
In order to strengthen its attractiveness and comply with international best practices, Casablanca Finance City undertook a series of reforms, transforming its legal and taxation frameworks.
The said reforms were carried out based on the application of several legal texts: the 2020 Budget Act, the Decree Law, the 2021 Budget Act, and the Enforcement Decree.
The reforms focus mainly on the following aspects.
Broadening of eligible activities. Following the entry into force of the decree law on the 1st of October, the CFC status has since opened up to 6 new business activities, namely investment companies, mutual investment funds, financial investment advisors, crowdfunding platforms, international trading companies, and technical and administrative service providers.
The latter can now invoice transactions for goods and services within the group and to third-party entities. This expansion will allow CFC to increase the flow of investments.
It is worth noting that
holding companies will henceforth be considered as financial institutions, regardless of the share they hold in the capital of their international subsidiaries.
Private wealth managers can now operate with both Moroccans and foreigners that are residents in Morocco. The next aspect of this reform relates to the reinforcement of compliance rules.
Companies wishing to obtain or maintain their CFC status must meet the new requirements. Provide an added value to the development of CFC. The general manager must reside in Morocco. Allocate a minimum of operating expenses in line with the activity of the company. At least one senior executive must have qualifying international experience. In the event that these requirements are not met, penalties may apply as stated by the law.
Please note that all CFC companies must comply with these new regulations by December 24th, 2021. The final component included in the reform focuses on the CFC status process, which has been simplified. The CFC status process has been streamlined for maximum efficiency. Casablanca Finance City Authority assesses and approves the application documents. It then submits proposals for granting the CFC status to the Ministry of Finance.
For regulated activities, CFCA requests an opinion from the relevant supervisory authority. The processing of requests is henceforth reduced to a period of 30 working days. In addition, the other major change to the CFC regime was introduced upon the publication of the 2020 and the 2021 Annual Budget Acts. Tax reform.
A single flat rate of 15% is applied to all CFC companies except banks and reinsurance companies. In this new regime, a 15% corporate tax is applied to both local and export activities, following a 5-year tax holiday. The new regime also includes an exemption from the corporate withholding tax on dividends distributed to residents and non-residents. CFC members under the former tax framework must transition to this new framework by December 31st, 2022.
These new regulations will improve Casablanca Finance City's value proposition and reinforce its international credentials as a trusted financial hub in Africa. For any questions or additional information, contact us. contact@cfca.ma.
There you go. That was a quick introduction to our topic today. You can find all this information at the CFC Reform webpage. The QR code to take you right to that page is at the following slides. Go check that out and use it to identify your questions. So Lamia, you will be the first one speaking today. You are Deputy General Manager of Casablanca Finance City. Obviously, all of our members know you already and are familiar with your team, as well as you are a key part of the CFC status process. Let's dive right in, okay? This new reform has broadened the type of eligible activities. Can you please walk us through it?
Thanks, Manal. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to meet today all the anglophone CFC community. As you know, we have been considering a widening of the scope of activities at CFC for a few years now. In fact, this has come as a request from our own CFC members, but also from companies that are not yet members but have a high potential to scale up the ecosystem. Now, our approach has always been to build together with the community, whether it be our offer, our value proposition, or even our positioning on eligible categories for the CFC status. So today, the slide in front of you is the result of long discussions with the various stakeholders to make CFC an even more attractive hub. And, you know, in order to massify, to strengthen the ecosystem and promote synergies between members. So in our new decree law, the CFC status has been extended to the new activities that you have in front of you. You have, financial institutions on the left. In addition to the previous categories, there are 1, in the investment companies, 2, mutual investment funds, that we call in French les OPC, the organismes de placement collectif. And here, I'd like to remind you that until now, management companies were eligible, but when we wanted to establish the vehicle, the investment fund, we needed to do so through the holding category. Investment funds were not eligible to the CFC status before the reform, but now you can request the status for any mutual investment fund, whether it is a private equity fund or a real estate fund, and so on. Then you have the crowdfunding companies or platform. As you know, the fintechs is an important axis of positioning in CFC. And as a matter of fact, we have created within CFC the African Innovation Lab, which objective is to be a catalyst and incubator for fintech startups, among others. So naturally, we included this activity in the scope of eligible companies, especially now that the law on crowdfunding was enacted. The 4th category is the financial investment advisors. But here, actually, these financial investment advisors already existed in the form of investment services providers, what we call in French les prestataires de services d'investissement. However, in this new category, this activity becomes a regulated activity that will have to comply with all the requirements of the IMMC, our Capital Markets Authority. Last but not least, also for the financial institution, we have 2 categories that are now, let's say, more flexible, more open. You have the holding companies, which are now considered as financial institutions. And the constraint that is no longer there is the fact that holding companies need to hold a majority in their subsidiaries' capital. They are now eligible regardless of the share they hold. Obviously, and it's important to mention, the main eligibility criterion, as for every category, remains the African strategy, the African footprint. And with regards to CFC's positioning as a hub for Africa, the regional vocation has always been the key criterion to be eligible. This is still the case, despite the fact that today in the decree, there is no threshold in terms of turnover. You have the wealth managers. So here, before, wealth management was possible for foreigners, whether they reside or not in Morocco. But since the reform, wealth management is completely open. It can be done with all individuals. So, the widening and the broadening of the scope is really comprehensive. Now, for non-financial institution, you have in the right of the column, the right column of the table, you have 3 categories. So the first change is the change in the name, just in the name, actually. And actually, this is something that we can't see in the English version because we kept the same name. In French, we went from prestataire de services professionnels to prestataire de services auxiliaires. But in English, we kept the same name. The second change affects the headquarters of multinationals. So today, the regional headquarters based in Casablanca Finance City are able to invoice goods and services within the group as well as to third parties. To be more precise, the new reform allows the invoicing of goods and the invoicing to third parties, which was not the case before. And also with regard to the name, these regional headquarters become technical and administrative service providers. The third change is the creation of a new category, the international trading companies, or négoces in French. These companies exclusively involve transactions with non-resident suppliers and customers. So to conclude, I'd say that the objective of this reform is really to create an environment for growth and performance improvement for our members. So this is all for me, and thank you very much, and feel free to ask your questions.
Thank you, Lamia. Thank you so much for these clarifications. We will have time indeed later on to address all the questions regarding this topic. Now, over to you, Hicham. You are Secretary General at Casablanca Finance City. Among many other duties, you oversee the compliance team here at CFC. The law clearly states new compliance rules for all member companies. Could you please elaborate a little bit more on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Manal. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here and to discuss with you, even virtually. Happy also to answer to your question after this session. As you know, the decree law and the enforcement decree, which is the actual legal framework of CFC now, focus a little bit more on compliance rules. What we are looking now within our members of CFC, when they want to obtain the CFC status and to maintain that status, they should fulfill a lot of requirements, mainly those on that slide, to add value for the CFC, for all the community, to have the general manager reside in Morocco, live here, and manage his team within the entity granted with the CFC status, and also having international experience, a minimum of 2 years when it's for professional, technical, and administrative services providers, and 1 year for experience for all other activities that my colleague Lamia just right now explained. The other criteria is to allocate minimum of resources to fulfill the activity of the company. How can I? It's more to show us for the compliance department, for the safety authority, how the company added value to the community, to the safety community. And the decree law and the enforcement decree gave to all companies at least 1 year till the 24th December 2021 to fulfill all the requirements, and we will be more than happy to help all the companies to answer in details how they can do that and how they can fulfill those requirements. And as you know, the best practices internationally, we should improve our legal framework, and it's normal that year after year we have the obligation to reinforce our compliance rules. The next slide, please. Yeah. Actually, in case of non-conformity, the legal framework puts some measures in that case: fine and penalty overrun, warning and withdrawal of the CFC status, which is the main measure to lose the CFC status. For the fine and penalty overrun, the failure of submitting the annual report, as you know, every company granted with the CFC status who want to maintain that status are obliged to submit an annual report by the end of March every year. And what is new, it was the fact it was that rule was previously in the last rule, but now the actual rule puts a fine of 3,000 dirhams per day over the deadline of the end of March. And the same thing for the annual fee. We will talk about it later. When the company are in the situation of non-paying within the legal deadline, there will be a fine or adding a fine of that annual fee. The warning: when the situation of non-major breach of the legal framework of CFC happened, the CFC authority will issue a warning to the company. And if that situation happened in the next 5 years, the warning will be granted or issued or given to that company, and will maybe go to the withdrawal of the status of CFC status, which is now in position of the CFC authority. We are in a position to ask the Ministry of Finance to withdraw the CFC status if the situation of the warning happened twice within 5 years, or when the failure or the breach is major to the legal framework. And I will be more happy to answer to all the questions in the Q&A after that session.
Thank you so much, Hicham. Thank you so much for these clarifications. Very important topics indeed. Please make sure that your legal team is aware of these aspects, because this is now stated by law, and we do want to make sure that all of our members are aware of these new measures that have been stated by law. So please make sure to spread the word around you and have your legal teams looped in. So let's move on to another important aspect of the CFC reform, which is the taxation framework. Si Mohammed, you are Director of the Financial Sector and Institutional Affairs. You have played a big role in the building blocks of this reform. Could you please tell us what are the main changes on the tax front? Over to you, Si Mohammed.
Is this working?
Yeah, works perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, here we go. Thank you, Manal. Before I share the details of the CFC tax reform, let me thank you, Manal, and all your team for the organization of this webinar that gave us the opportunity to talk about the reform of CFC tax law, rules, and regulation that I have the privilege to negotiate with all the authorities, supervisors, and all the institutions involved in this process, from the drafting of the provisions to their entry into force. Well, let me thank all of our CFC community participants. Today, after the presentation by my colleagues of the new law, I'm going to talk about the tax reform. I want to go through the CFC tax reform by summarizing the 4 CFC tax policy measures that have been included in the Finance Acts for the years 2020 and 2021. The first measure introduced in the Finance Act of 2020 unified the corporate tax rates and the tax base of all CFC categories. The measure sets the rate of corporation tax at 15% after a tax holiday of no rate policy for the 5 first years. That means that we are cutting the normal corporate tax applied in Morocco for non-CFC companies of 31% by 16%, which is huge. This flat tax applies to the profits from local or international business without any ring fencing or distinction between transactions with residents and non-residents. The new corporate tax system entered into force from the financial year beginning 1st January 2020. It continues to exist or to coexist with the old regime from the 1st January 2020 to the 31st December 2022. And will be the only existing regime beginning 1st January 2023. To say a word about the policy objective behind this change, let's say that this measure supports the CFC's double objective to abolish all the harmful tax practices from the regime whilst keeping the CFC's rates of corporation tax competitive relative to other major comparable economies and financial centers. The second measure introduced in the Finance Act of 2021 amended the regime and applied a normal to a very limited category of CFC companies, for instance, banks and insurance companies, keeping the competitive flat tax of 15% for all businesses that not fall within these two groups. The third measure now introduced in the Finance Act of 2021 provided grandfathering to existing taxpayers, which means that the profits being an exemption of or for 5 years, followed by a rate of 8.75% is preserved only until 31st December 2022 for taxpayers that were benefiting from the regime prior to 1st January 2020. The fourth measure introduced in the Finance Act 2021 amended the withholding tax applied to dividends. Significantly today, CFC does not impose withholding tax on dividend payments. This is unusual among most more developed tax jurisdictions and common holding company jurisdictions. Combined with the wide Morocco tax exemption for dividends received from local companies, this allows profits to be distributed from local companies in other jurisdictions through a CFC holding company to the ultimate shareholders without any Morocco tax leakage. This is very important. This is a key benefit of CFC as an effective holding company jurisdictions. Just there is no direct impact on individuals as corporation tax is levied on companies, and this exemption on withholding tax is applied to corporate income tax and not individual or personal income tax. It was important to mention it. That's all I wanted to share with you this morning about the new CFC tax regime. For further details, advices, or if you have any questions about these changes, please don't hesitate to contact me directly or via my colleagues, and we will do our best to give you all the details you need to the best of our knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed. Yes, indeed, this is a quick sneak peek into each topic, but we do want to make sure we bring value to you and respond to all your questions. So please do not hesitate to submit your questions in the Q&R box. So good to see some questions dropping in already. Avijit, so good to see you here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you once again, all of you who have joined. So drop me a message. Please be kind and drop me a message if you're still engaged with us. I want to make sure that we have the right energy here. We're together, we're one community. As I said, we have cleared our schedules to make sure that we connect with you guys, that we respond to all your questions. We are here to serve, we are here to hear you. So please, let's make this an interactive session. So after 10 years of existence, CFC is heading towards a new phase, as you know, of development with new and big ambitions. This reform comes also with another change that we're about to share with you, which is related to the fees of the CFC status. To walk us through this, I am introducing to you Loubna Oualhadj. You are Deputy Secretary General at Casablanca Finance City and have been working hard with the team on defining these new fees. Can you please tell us more about that? Thank you, Loubna.
Yes, thank you, Manal. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being present today so that you give us the opportunity to update you with what's new under the new law. And quite rightly so. So the decree law concerning the reorganization of Casablanca Finance City also addresses the fees paid by CFC applicants and members. And these fees, having been more at symbolic levels during the first years of the financial center's existence, and are now moving to a level that is more consistent with the CFC's ambitions and with international benchmarks. So we are still talking about two types of fees, which are instruction fees and annual fees, but their rates are different. So instruction fees paid to CFC authority at the time of the submission of the application for the CFC status, calculated by category of business, taking into account the situation of the company, its size and its activity. As you already benefit from the CFC status, you are not concerned by these fees. On the other side, we have the annual fees, which are paid to CFC authority annually and are meant for now on to contribute to the development of the financial center. They are also calculated by status category and now includes two variables: the fee linked to the activity of the company and employee related fees. So let's talk about the first variable, fees linked to activity. They are taking effect on January 2022 for existing members. The calculation formula takes into account the level of turnover achieved by the member during the financial year preceding the invoicing, as well as the share of international activity in that turnover, considering, of course, the importance of the regional dimension in the CFC's own DNA. So the level of the fees linked to activity will decrease when the share of international activity increases. And as an example, these fees total up 80,000 dirhams, excluding tax, for a member, for example, a service provider, with an annual turnover of 10 million dirhams and 70 of that turnover realized abroad. And now we move on to the second variable, which is the employee-related fees, which took effect on January 2021. So this contribution is calculated on the basis of company's total staff and stands for, for example, 80,000 dirhams, excluding tax, based on a staff of 20 collaborators. And members renting an office space from CFC benefit from an advantage, and they are not going to pay this part of the fees. And of course, one-to-one simulations can be performed by CFC authority. So we invite you to get in touch with our support team as you usually do. And we are open to answer to all your questions, of course, if needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Loubna. Thank you so much for explaining that.